Thank you so much for the introduction. Well, there's no need to be envious whatsoever because, we create this like collaboratively for people like you guys, and we're really inspired by everyone. And I'm really envious of you, Piers, and this conference. No, seriously, because I was just realizing today, I didn't know where Fort Mason Center was when I was kind of needed to get here at 8 in the morning. And I kind of Wikipedia'd it. And, excuse me, that was not a word, and realized that it was a converted military base. So I'm like really envious of like you bringing together this amazing group of people at a converted military base to talk about making things better. I think that's really, really cool. And to think also, as Chris Riley pointed out, that Stuart Brand may be like wandering around somewhere on this base, like planning out what's happening 10,000 years from now. If we don't like mess it up first, So anyhow, I guess we need to try to make it through some stuff. So these are handmade buttons that we made before there was a magazine. When we had no business. But my friend Ben, just like through a fluke circumstance, it was actually pretty sad. His parents passed away. Like he invited me and Casey, our creative director. We were all friends. He invited us out to try to start a magazine called Good. Do you really want to start a magazine called Good? Like, are people going to pay attention to that? But, we were at this time where we were kind of trying to figure out what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to be when you grow up? Like, still trying to ask that question. And I think Liz Dunn was saying earlier how, like, people who aren't good at things, like, work 14 hours a day. Like, I'm like, that's me. Been working, like, 14-hour days for the last 3 years, but I think really blessed at the same time to, like, be doing something I love. Like, I think that's kind of the key. So these were like handmade buttons before there was a magazine. And I just wanted to take a little poll because I'm just kind of curious. Like, how many of you here are interested in doing good or like making some contribution to society? Cool. So like the vast majority, that's pretty amazing. I was talking last night we were getting drinks. I was talking to Mike from Behance. I was gonna like not start the talk until everyone raised their hand, because this talk is about aligning interests. And I think once we all decide, okay, we're interested in doing good, we're interested in making things better, it's like, all right, so let's team up. How can we work together? How can we align our interests to do that? So then the second question, so most people are interested in doing good or making some contribution. How many of you are interested in like making money or earning money? Like, cool, so most people there too. And I think that gets to like a really central part of this talk, which is this, altruism. Crossed out. I think we've been shooting ourselves in the foot for so freaking long by like saying, okay, if you do good, it's altruistic. You aren't going to have sex if you're interested in doing good. You're not going to have fun, and you're not going to make money. But like, go for it. Do it. So that's not what I want to do. And it was like, so at the same time, there was like that notion of like a really, like a do-gooder was a pejorative in our society, because like they're poor, they're not having fun, they're really self-righteous, they're gonna like preach at you if you go over there, all that stuff. So yeah, I was like, no, I don't know. But at the same time, the people I really respect and we really respected were doing good and were really interested in that. So we're like, wow, there's this disconnect. So anyhow, so kind of trying to get past that idea. Because I think when you start out at a point of altruism, like I'm taking aside my self-interest, it's like, how can you align interests? How can you get something done? And I think what ends up happening is idealistic people end up being cynical, because they go and they like make no money and they work forever and they get burnt out and there are no results because they're being so generous that they're, doing this, and then it just doesn't work. So, but like, we're now at a converted military base talking about things in a different way at a different moment in time. That's super, super exciting. So these are my unmet needs. Like, I think we're all kind of, well, you guys actually seem to be doing quite well, but I'm still working on trying to make money and a contribution to society. And like having fun is really, really important too. And so we got these Venn diagrams things that are happening because the language doesn't really work sometimes when we're trying to kind of start this thing. And so a lot of this talk, I'm going to go through some of the inspirations for good and kind of what got us going. And we're still figuring out how to turn those into things. But today, hearing all of your inspirations has been awesome. So when I first got out to Los Angeles 3.5 years ago, it was to make media content that's entertaining and relevant. So it's like, seems like there's a lot of stuff that's entertaining, you know, that's what sells in the newsstand. And then there's relevant stuff like the Utney Reader that's like, you know, covering substantial topics. But there seemed to be a lack of stuff in the middle, and we wanted to kind of go after that space. And then just kind of feeling this thing which we all talked about, but and I think is just really core is, you know, how can we exist in that center of pragmatic and idealistic? You know, they like the counterculture, I think, you know, they're really idealistic, but it was like, let's take down the system. But now, like Chris was saying, like the counterculture has become the culture, and it's like hanging out in that middle space, and there are all these CEOs who are like really interested in making things better. So this is the back office where we started good. It was this teeny little room, and we just kind of were working, and we had the blessing of a little bit of time to just work on this thing. And so that's the goodometer, which we found out. I didn't subscribe to any magazines when I got signed up to go out and try to start this thing. And so it's like, okay, how do you get people to subscribe to a magazine right now? And we did kind of magazine 101, and we found out the way you do it is through direct mail. And we found out how expensive that was, and we found out that people like us didn't really respond, and that we kind of asked ourselves, would we respond? And it was kind of, the answers weren't coming back super positive. So what we decided to do was we had this kind of idea where we found out that direct mail would cost $45 per acquisition. And we said the most we could charge was $20. So we said, what if we just gave it all to nonprofits that we think are awesome? Groups like Ashoka and, you know, Teach for America, who are really just doing things in a new way. And so we started that. And so this is before there was a magazine. We had the Choose Good campaign. And this was like 20 people who had subscribed because we like strong-armed them at the office. Like we thought when we turned that on, like the Choose Good campaign, everyone would just subscribe, be like, oh yeah, the money goes to charity and you get the new magazine. But it didn't quite happen. So we found it like do events with free drinks and $20 and all the money goes to charity. And then everyone told their friends and wanted to do it because you had the altruism part. It wasn't just about altruism. So anyhow, so this was in the back office. We were kind of dreaming. These were kind of what ended up as our core values and have always been really important to us. Transparency has been a theme that I think a lot of people have touched on today. And it's just like, it's the emperor's new clothes. You know, it's nothing to hide. If you're acting out of that, you're going to do great things. Creativity, I mean, gosh, there's so many creative people here. And I think that's something, you know, that's just, it's the best when you can be immersed in that. And authenticity, like we talk about, you know, not wanting to do what we're supposed to do, but doing what we think is right. And I think, you know, a lot of people have touched on authenticity, and there seems to be that kind of movement in society and kind of a new sincerity and all that, and it's cool. Utility, not being wasteful and kind of pushing things forward, and then love, like nobody could deny that that was important too. So this was our first cover that we came up with, like the newsstand people, we lucked out and we got national distribution. And then the newsstand people thought we were gonna do a celebrity cover, like Angelina Jolie or something. And we couldn't figure out what we wanted to do. And we didn't have a cover, and it was like going to print. So we knew we wanted a manifesto, and Casey kind of came up with doing a fill in the blank. And so it was a do-it-yourself personal manifesto. And I think the idea was, you know, kind of the democratization of meaning. You know, we're not going to tell you what to love to do, but whatever you want to do, you know, do it, put your heart into it. So that was the first cover, and the newsstand people almost fainted when they saw it. And then it sold out almost everywhere, and the response was really cool. So I was in Japan because like this magazine, like some people saw it and they thought it was cool. So I got to go to Japan with all these great people, and one of them was Roseanne Hagerty. And Cameron Sinclair was also there, and he was like, you got to meet Roseanne Hagerty, you're going to love her. And I was like, she's doing homeless stuff in New York. I was like, homeless stuff, like that's not that cool. And so then like the second or third day, I got into a cab with her, and there was a traffic jam. And it was like the best thing that's ever happened to me. I was in the back seat, and I just asked her a couple questions, and it turned out, you know, 25 years ago, she graduated college and went to New York to like work in a soup kitchen, and has since been learning about the system and has been solving the problem of homelessness in such an amazing way. And she kind of broke it down. I don't know if some of you guys read the article Malcolm Gladwell did in the New Yorker a couple years back, $1 Million Murray. I think it was called that. But a guy in Reno who was homeless cost the city $1 million over like 10 years. And it turns out that chronically homeless people cost the city so much money just to be homeless and, in this terrible situation. So simultaneously, she kind of worked with the research that was documenting how much the status quo costs, at the same time coming up with a solution of providing, free, affordable housing and all the services these people needed at, a fraction of the cost. These are estimates, but I think it was like $25,000 for the solution and $110,000 for the status quo. So she brings that to people like Mike Bloomberg, and they're like, yeah, let's do it. And so it's been spreading, and so saw that. And then she was also the one who did the altruism slide. So I got it again because I just think that's so important. And so it's like altruism, but it's not a mean-spirited thing. It's like, let's just be honest here. You can want to do good, but that's part of your self-interest, and do as much good as possible. And so we also like this idea of a community of individuals. We think Apple really embodies this. It's like, how can you do a campaign, think different, and have that resonate with a whole bunch of people all over? It's so cool. And in the old readings in college, de Tocqueville talked about self-interest properly understood, where an individual saw it in their self-interest to kind of make the community do well. And I think that's what we're really seeing flourish in our society right now. And so we're really excited about kind of respecting every single individual, but trying to grow kind of a group of individuals. So this is just a really simple metrics of business for a long time has just been profit and loss. And in this age of transparency and information, now kind of harm and social value become a really big factor. And you can also look at this as societal interest and individual interest, individual person or business. But so we're that little X right now. We're losing a little bit of money and doing a tiny bit of good. But we're really hoping to get into that top corner, and we're just excited about everything in that top corner. This is a campaign Google's doing. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but it's so cool. It's the biggest issue right now is renewable energy and versus fossil fuels, and they just said, we want to work to make renewable energy cheaper than coal, and it's just that simple. And it's as soon as that happens, it's going to align people's interests. So you do what's cheaper, and if it's better for the world and it's going to allow us to, do the things we want and live the kind of lives we want, I think that's so cool. I think that really embodies the kind of top corner. So this I put together last night. I hope this makes sense. So based on this grid, so the top corner is what we're going for. This is Walmart. They're making a ton of money and big impact, but it's so cool what they're doing in terms of, you got to watch out when you say it's so cool what Walmart's doing, but at the same time, they've committed to being a zero waste organization and being all renewable energy. When a company that big does that, it's so game changing. Hearing all this stuff Starbucks is doing and Jean Marie's perspective, in an institution like Starbucks is so wonderful. And then Ford, I think, is an example of a company that's losing money and doing harm on some level. But they're I chose that because it's a big SUV climbing up rocks, into, they're probably not sitting around in focus groups now being we need bigger cars with less gas mileage. They're figuring that their road to profitability is up that diagonal. And then there we are losing a little bit of money, but trying to do a little good and trying to get up in that corner. So it's we're all trying to get up in that corner. So this, unfortunately, I don't think is that readable. I love this diagram, but it's just a little doodle. And it's kind of Maxim, as I see it, and all the wonderful advertisers here who support that sort of universe. I mean, it's a cool magazine, whatever. But it's they're doing their thing and getting all these consumers together, and then the businesses are excited because they can advertise and reach these consumers and kind of propagate this Maxim universe. And then the consumers dig into Maxim and the scantily clad women, because it's their self-interest. Their Maxim knows that. And then the consumers buy the products. So unfortunately, I doubt you guys can look at that. And then this is if it's good instead of Maxim, which it's I don't know. I like to think that's a nice change of a sensibility in society. But I think it's more exciting to think if you take out like good as like our little company and it's more just social good. And you're thinking of businesses connecting with consumers by adding value to society, and the process of consumption itself being a good, a social good, I think is really, really exciting and encouraging. This may make no sense. This is like an inspiration and like a total rough draft thought, but it's like, what's advertising that's in that top corner that's adding value to society, but also kind of providing better return on the company's dollars, like the bottom line, you know, because like you've got like the traditional advertising that, you know, is successful, it leads to profits, but like, is it really doing anything good, or is it just kind of, you know, wasting and doing all that? And then you've got like the blinking pop-up ad, which is just like a nuisance and I don't think is doing anyone any good. And then you've got just like the charitable contribution, you know, just make a donation, but doesn't really connect with your bottom line. Like, really excited to see what's going to emerge in that top corner. This is just a little billboard of Kiva. It's on the 101 here. PayPal lent Kiva some money, and then Kiva put this up. And I think it makes PayPal look really good, and I think it's cool that they're propagating Kiva because, you know, Kiva's a partner of ours, and they do really great stuff. But I think another couple of examples, I think the American Express Members Project is really cool. As a little startup, I think Tom's Shoes is doing interesting stuff where they kind of give away a pair of shoes for every pair you buy. And there are more and more examples of these types of things. Kiva is really interesting too because they align all of their stakeholders' interests in such a wonderful way. I was talking to Jessica the other day, and she was talking about how aligning interests is how you get everything done. And, you know, for individuals like us, it's great to have Kiva as a mechanism to kind of make some measure of social impact. Is that me? All right, maybe we should change the subject. Kiva's getting enough attention. And the entrepreneurs, it's great because, you know, they get this opportunity. The MFIs, the microfinance institutions, get sort of, you know, a pool of money that's low interest, and Kiva gets to facilitate all this great stuff. So it's in everyone's interest to do it, so it works. So that was all rough draft stuff on the agency. Like, I'm really interested in sitting down with some really smart advertising people to figure out, especially like numbers nerds, like, I think people are on board with this. I think CMOs are on board with this, but how do you make it work for the bottom line? You know, like, how do you, like what are the goals, and how do you, you know, build in doing good or some social impact in a way that makes the campaign more successful? I know that Microsoft's I'm initiative has had really encouraging first results in terms of user satisfaction and other things, which is super cool. But I want to see more examples. I want to see more case studies so people don't have to feel like their ass is on the line when they like try something that could be great. So that little chart that does not come up here is in the top corner because it's like, how cool would it be if all advertising and all consumption was existing in this good for society, good for the bottom line world? Like, we would really push things forward and kind of avoid a lot of the dangers that face us today. So this is, I don't know, just an idea, but they talk about triple bottom line, how things have moved from like a single bottom line to a triple bottom line. I think a triple bottom line is a little too confusing because it's like, how do you measure that stuff? So I think what's happening is people are starting to think about the triple bottom line, and that's getting important, but I think it's up to the consumer to make the triple bottom line so important to the single bottom line that really matters to companies. And I think that's really the key. So I'm hoping we're going to see this triple bottom line thing happen until it's just the norm that every company has to be kind of a single bottom line company that embodies all three. How do you create a jewel? Like, how do you create something in that top corner? I think that's what businesses are going to, like, the people who do that are going to succeed in a really wonderful way. I think that's what inspires me. Like, what are partnerships and ideas that exist, you know, that are good for society and good for the individual? This is where we are right now. We've got a lot of authenticity because we just have, I don't know, so embarrassing. But how do you get it to scale? that's what we're trying to figure out. And I think marketers know that, but it's like scale, it's difficult to have the authenticity. It's like when you have the authenticity, how do you bring it to scale? I think one idea is this idea of like being local and global, which we're really excited, being local everywhere. So that's what we're thinking about. And then this is another thing. I think it's like where idealistic people can be cynical again. It's like when you see so much green, it's like, stop. So we took green out of our, our writers aren't allowed to say that word or something. But we think that, it's awesome, this age of awareness that we're in, but we want it to just become the norm. I think everyone gets it, so then we don't have to talk about green, and it's just, people do it. So that's like a goal to get to that no green place. And then this is just so key. I think Google and The Daily Show really embody this, but just, being serious and fun at the same time. And just like when you're dealing with issues like called good, like you better keep a sense of humor. And then just the last slide is just, so excited about doing collaborations up in that corner. So anyone who wants to talk about that stuff, that would be great. So thanks, guys.
Hey, Max, I'm just curious in terms of how do you approach making a magazine in terms of the paper and have a name like Good, and how are you sort of addressing that just on a sort of general?
It's a good question. I mean, Frank Lokentor, who does the paper project with Co-op America, is a friend, and it's kind of fun because working with the system, you can try to make things better. So we use some of the most recycled paper, but we're not willing to sacrifice the quality of the paper. If you guys have seen the magazine, we try to print on a really high quality paper to respect the end user. So we're working to get it as recycled and environmentally friendly as possible, but also, the best quality possible. And what's annoying is the newsstand industry doesn't recycle at all. And we're just a small fish, so we can't get them to do that. So there ends up being some waste there, which is too bad. But I think being inside of the system is a good place to try to change that. So, and the internet is amazing, but still the best place to look at a picture and read something. It's still a tangible page, I think. But any other questions or? No? Okay. Thanks, guys.